Before we begin, a quick note. I made none of this, outside of the script and video. The system was made by Jacob Buds over on the XP to Level 3 YouTube channel. I was not contacted nor was asked to do this. I'm simply making this video out of my own free will and volition, along with my love for both his content and the Fallout series as a whole. Along with that, the original Arcane Arcade Patreon post where you can find the PDF and character sheet will be linked in the description. While mostly for visuals, I do also use the fanfics made by this lovely person on the Arcane Arcade Discord server. And, without any more preamble, let's start where most good things start with. The interjection, while short at only a page, gives us a lot to think about when it comes to the goal of the system. The system is balanced around a give and take mentality. You can be good at guns and good at talking to people, but you can't throw a punch, nor can you take a punch. The four main takeaways are, it's good to have a niche for your character, it's good to know what you want your character to be very early on, there are no classes, and it's very often the most useful part, as a campaign without characters is just a stage with no actors. For those who have played a Fallout game, more so up to and including New Vegas, you will have a general idea on what's going on when it comes to character creation. However, it still requires a thorough reading of the PDF. First is your race. There are 5 races that you can play as: human, ghoul, synth, robot, and super mutant. Next is your special points: strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, and luck. You start with 5 in each stat and 3 unassigned points to put into any of them. Now, you are able to take out already assigned points and put them into other stats if you so choose. However, bare minimum, you need 1 point in each stat. You can also think of it as each stat is starting at 1 and you have 31 points to spend. Whatever's easier to think about. Once you're done allocating points, you can determine your modifier for each ability, which is just score minus 5. For example, a 10 in your luck stat is a plus 5 to any luck roll. If your ability score is less than a 5, you will actually get a negative modifier for your ability. For example, if your intelligence is a 2, you will have a negative 3 on each intelligence roll. After that, you can now determine your skills. On the left-hand side of each skill, it will tell you what modifier to use as its base. Medicine, Intimidation, and Breach let you choose which of the 2 stats you can use as a modifier. Now, you would have your luck modifier rounded down. Of course, this also can be a negative number. Next on the docket, choosing a background. Each background gives you a plus 2 and 3 different skills as listed, along with a trait and items. Both the trait and the items are optional. Traits are extra modifiers that you can add to a character, often giving a bonus and taking away something in return. Now, this is where we get to the part where we calculate a bunch of our stats. First, you calculate your stamina and action points, both of which are your agility modifier plus 10. Then, you calculate your hit points, which are your endurance modifier plus 10. Next is your healing rate, which is your level plus endurance ability score added together, then halved. Your ability score is the actual number you put into it, not to be confused with your ability score modifiers. Then you calculate your carry load, which is just the base strength score, not modifier, times 10. Well, we just calculated a lot of stats for a character. Let's go over some of them. First, stamina points, SP, which is very similar to a bonus health of sorts. When hit, you can choose to subtract the damage from your stamina points. However, you do need to be aware of what's attacking you, so surprise or sneak attacks always hit normal health. Stamina points are less of how much damage you take and more so how good are you at dodging, working more as a figurative way for being able to dodge around enemy attacks. So running out of stamina points means that you're exhausted and can't dodge as well. 10 minutes of rest, which is different from sleeping, will restore half your stamina points. 8 hours of sleeping will restore all of your stamina points. Action points, AP, are effectively the same as in Fallout 1 and 2. Depending on the action, you will use a certain amount of AP. At the start of your turn, you will have all of your action points restored. At the start of your turn, if your last turn you had leftover AP, it will be halved and then added to your current amount. For example, if your max is 12 and you only had 6 left over last turn, you'll have 15 because you add half of 6 to your current. Most actions range from 6 to 3 AP in cost. Moving 5 feet is 1 AP. AP effectively allows people to have multi-attack from level 1. Baseline for any non-book specific action is 1 AP is incredibly fast and 6 AP is really slow, so the GM can set the player's action accordingly. HP is health. You get to 0, you start dying. At 0 HP, you both go prone and lose all your action points. However, on the start of your next turn, you get 4 AP points, which can be recycled. However, you can only ever have a max of 6 while dying. Now, on the start of your turn, you can choose to make a death saving throw, which costs 2 AP. For each saving throw, you roll a d20 with a DC of 10. On your roll, you either add your luck or endurance modifier. Along with that, you add your party's nerve bonus, which is something we'll get to in a minute. If you do not make a death save on your turn, it counts as a fail on that save. If you pass 3 saving rolls, you come back with 1 HP, and if you fail 3 saving throws, you die. HR is the amount of health you get back from healing sources. So when you eat something, drink something, sleep for 8 hours, or use a stim pack, carry load is how much weight you can carry at any given time. Unlike the actual Fallout games where every single item has its weights in pounds, items are given a load in bulk that the player can carry. For example, 50 caps is 1 load, meaning that at max strength, 10, you can carry 5,000 caps. Now, of course, you can go over it, but you get the encumbered condition. And if you go over double your load, you get the heavily encumbered condition. When you're encumbered, it takes 2 AP to move, and you gain a level of fatigue every hour you're encumbered. Heavily encumbered bumps that 2 AP cost to 3. Every hour you lose 2 stamina points, which are reset upon sleeping, and every day your carry load is lowered by 10. One note, most armors come with a different carry load depending on whether or not you're wearing them, which will be listed in the armor section. Now, strength requirement isn't a direct player stat and more so item based. However, I feel it's important to mention now as it will help for later. All weapons and some armors, along with some other miscellaneous items, have strength requirements. If you do not meet those requirements, on weapons you get disadvantage on attack rolls, and with armor, when equipped, you are slowed. Slow just means you start with a max of 6 AP. So far, character creation has been very similar to the actual Fallout games. However, at this point, we are going to delve into more of the unique attributes in the system. First new stat is Party Nerf. The total of your party's charisma modified added together and then halved. Group Sneak. The total sneak modifier of each party member divided by the amount of people in said party. Say there's a party of 5 people with a total of a plus 10 sneak modifier. The group sneak is a plus 2. Passive sense is 12 plus your perception modifier. Now, AC, your armor class, at level 1 is 10 and is only modified by armor, perks, and abilities. Unless stated otherwise, it can't be lower than a 10. Damage threshold, DT, is 0, and by default is modified the same way as your armor class. Hunger, dehydration, and exhaustion, all of which will be covered soon, are all set to 0 at level 1. Now, this is only for human classes. Radiation difficulty class, RDC, which is 12 minus your endurance ability modifier. We calculated another set of stats, so let's cover them. First, Party Nerf, PN, is used for death saves, and when you roll combat sequence, you will gain temporary SP equal to your Party Nerf. Think of it as the passion to keep on fighting, or team spirit. Group Sneak is kinda niche, at least in general usage. It's mostly used to see how well you sneak across an area. How well you sneak across an area is determined by your speed. Often, the faster you go, the less likely you are to sneak by, and vice versa. Armor class is the exact same as in most tabletop RPGs. When being attacked, the enemy must first roll for said attack. If it meets armor class and beats it, you take damage. Damage threshold is great, and I wish 5e had it, but then again this is why I use other systems. Damage threshold can be seen as a constant negative damage modifier for things attacking you. So if your DT is 3 and you get hit by a lever action shotgun for say 8 damage, you will only take 5 because you subtract the total damage with your DT. Radiation DC, or RDC, is how well you can handle radiation. This really only applies to humans. On the start of each of your turn, while you're in an irradiated zone, you roll a d20 against your RDC. Depending on how irradiated the zone is, you might roll once a turn or once every hour. Now, every time you fail the RDC, you gain 1 level of radiation. If you succeed, you don't have to get a level of radiation, but your RDC is increased by 2, which is reset when you leave the area. Also, if you get 10 levels of radiation, or you become a ghoul on a lower than 5 luck check. If you get over 5, you become a feral ghoul. Now, optionally, you can add the equipment from your background, or you can trade in all your equipment for 850 caps. Usually, by this point, you should have a weapon. All weapons use a different skill, which is your attack bonus. When rolling to attack with a weapon, you add these skill modifiers to the roll to see if you hit. Big guns, pistols, rifles, shotguns, submachine guns all use the gun skill. Bladed, melee, and mechanical weapons use the melee skill. Explosive, energy weapons, and unarmed use their respective skill. Now, when doing actual damage to a creature, you add your damage bonus, which is the ability modifier from the associated skill. For example, a pistol would add your agility modifier because the gun skill uses the agility ability modifier. As I mentioned briefly before, traits are optional additions to your character that can do a series of things, often with the give and take effect. Optionally, at level 1 you can take up to 2 traits, which can be modified with Wild Wasteland, which we'll cover near the end. Max, you can only have 2 traits, and the only time you're allowed to pick traits is at level 1. Similarly to traits, we have perks. At level 1, you have 1 perk to choose from. Some perks are general perks, which most anyone can use. They're more so to put your foot in the ground and help start figuring out what you want your character to be. Ability traits are traits that have certain ability score requirements. They're useful to start running headfirst into the fleshed out idea of your build. Now, that's a majority of your character done. However, we still need the race to finish out your character. Starting with humans. Humans are the bog standard of the playable races, with no special traits. Now, of course, you can choose variant human. Of course, you will have to double check with your GM. Variant humans get 2 special traits, resourceful and unexposed. Resourceful just gives you 1 extra karma cap. Unexposed means you gain disadvantage on all radiation and addiction checks. With that, you can also be a Gen 3 synth, which has no real gameplay effect, but is more story and character based. By the way, you either talk to your GM about being a Gen 3 synth, or you roll a d20 on your character creation to see if you all want. Wait, I haven't explained karma caps. Karma caps are a big part of the system, so now would be a good time to explain. Every player gets 1 karma cap by default. They are literal bottle caps, in which you can use to re-roll a d20. The cap can either be flipped or unflipped. When unflipped, the player can unflip it to gain advantage or re-roll a d20. Now, the GM is the only one able to unflip it, which in that case, they get the advantage on whatever roll they're about to make. Now, you are also able to reset your karma cap by rolling a 1 on a d20 or having a critical hit made against you. You are able to have more than 1 karma cap, but you only reset 1 at a time. Let's continue with the races. Ghouls are like humans but irradiated and zombie-like, and effectively living forever. They have 2 traits by default, evolution and resilient anatomy. Evolution means that radiation doesn't affect you in any way, shape, or form. Resilient anatomy means that you are resistant to poison damage. However, stamina points you get from food, drinks, or chems, hit points from impact, and damage from bleeding conditions are halved. Once again, you can be a variant ghoul. Make sure to check with your GM beforehand. They have 3 new traits. Many Road Walk, which gains a +2 in all skills and gains an extra perk at level 1. Old Bones, which you gain an immunity to poison damage. Along with that, you gain the Stitched Together perk. And the Half-Life trait, where you become a Feral Ghoul at level 15, where you cannot be controlled. Next on the races is the Gen 2 Synth. Gen 2 Synths are robots made to look human, but failing to do so in a lot of ways. They can effectively live forever with regular repairs. They are immune to radiation and don't need to drink, eat, sleep, or breathe, and gain no effects from chems, drinks, or foods. Unlike Gen 3 synths, they always know that they're a robot, and with that, they gain a few special traits by being more machine-like than their fleshy successor. Brittle Body, when a targeted attack is made, you gain 2 limb conditions instead of 1, which we'll cover in the combat section. Along with being vulnerable to electricity damage, another trait is software and hardware upgrades. When taking a pick, you are considered a robot, which can and usually does change a lot of perks that you get. Another trait is artificial intelligent algorithms. Whenever you gain a skill point, you get 1 extra. There are no variant Gen 2s. Next is a robot race, which has 3 sub-races. They can live forever with regular repairs and don't need to eat, drink, sleep, or breathe. Each robot sub-race has these 2 universal abilities: Severed Limbs and Armor and Weapons. Severed Limbs allows you to reattach limbs that fall off or break off with the use of 3 stills and 1 circuitry junk item. This, however, takes time equal to 10 minus the crafting skill bonus. If the time is reduced to 0, you just use 6 AP to attach the limb instead. Now, the armors and weapons are less of a trait and more of a statistic, and depending on your robot subtype, you might just have a weapon already, which can be upgraded and modified like any other weapon. The only restraint that is put on a robot is that you cannot use power armor. Now, onto the first of the 3 robot races. First is the Handies. I'm gonna have to change that in post this. The Handy line of robots are based off these things that you find throughout the wasteland. Due to the fact that they're more robotic than humanoid, they come with a series of new traits and specialties. Limbs and targeted attack allow up to 3 arms and 3 eyes to be attached to the large core that you call a body. Now, because of your robotic frame, you have no head, groin, or legs. Along with that, it costs 2 less AP than it would to attack any other creature in the eye. They can target you right where it hurts, in your core. Though getting hit there costs 2 more AP than usual, When you get hit then, 7 you fall prone and can't move till it's reattached. You're a machine, no more complex than a car, and just like a car in the 60s, you chug gas like it's a job. You acquire oil once a week, either in a 1-gallon jug of oil or 6 oil junk items, both of which are consumed when used. If you need gas and don't have any, every hour you have to make a DC 12 endurance check. If you fail the DC, you fall unconscious. If you pass, you must increase the DC by 2 each time you succeed. Now, a good way of remembering how many hours after the week is 168 hours, so use that to keep track. That, or if you don't like oil, you can use a fusion core, which are harder to get, but you stay kicking for 30 whole days before you need a refill. Along with that, you have a jet engine, which lets you hover off the ground and not set off traps. But when knocked prone, you become stunned or unconscious, hitting the ground. Now, as an incredible multi-talented appliance, you are allowed to put any of these items on any of your 3 arms. Now, you are able to modify them like any other weapon, and they cost no AP to equip or stow. Additionally, the only way to detach them is by severing them. Now, you have about a dozen different hands that you can use at any given time, with some being more utilities while others are just weapons. Now, am I going to go over all of them? No. Just know that anything that you are confused about when it comes to the weapon stats will be covered later in the video. On to the second of the 3, Protectrons. Protectrons are very much designed around being a big slow tank that can tase someone. They have no eyes or groins that can be targeted. Naturally, they have a +1 to DT even without any armor. However, they come with the slow condition constantly, where they can only spend 6 AP on movement. Similar to the Mr. Handyliner robots, you have one arm that you can switch items onto. Most of the items are combat focused rather than the mix of utility and combat of the Mr. Handyliner. Lastly, in the docket of robots, we have the Robo-Brains, having no legs, feet, eyes, or groin that can be targeted. However, in place of those, they have rollers, which are effectively the same as legs, but can't be severed. Along with that, those rollers allow you to move through difficult terrain with no extra AP cost. Next is neurotransmitters, which means you're vulnerable to electrical damage. Along with that, when having a targeted attack made against your head, you gain 2 limb conditions instead of 1. Now on to the last of the 5 playable races. We have Super Mutants. Super Mutants are similar to ghouls in the fact that they're both effectively immortal and immune to radiation. However, they come with their own slew of traits. They're the only class to be bigger than the standard human, standing anywhere from 7 to 9 feet tall, but they still have a medium size. The main thing about this trait is it disallows you from using power armor, unless you have modified the power armor to fit you. Due to their mass, they get double the hunger and dehydration a normal person would get. Bulky, with great mass comes the fact that you suck firing. What that means, every time you get a level of decay on a weapon, you get 2. But with that bulkiness, you get your superior strength, meaning that your strength cannot be lower than a 6. Along with that, your carry load is increased by 40. Now, the 2 variations of Super Mutants actually replace the superior strength trait. Once more, ask your GM if you're allowed to use these. First, you can be a defective strain. Like any super mutant from the east, you are as dumb as a rock with a -2 intelligence, as your intelligence is capped at 3. But you gain a +2 to both endurance and strength, along with the carry load increasing by 40. Now, Knight can gain all the advantage of the standard superior strength trait, but also gain a new ability, Stealth Field. Using 3 action points, you can turn invisible for at least 1 minute. Every use after the first one, you gain a -1 to perception for 24 hours. This, however, does not take effect when you select a pick, as normal perception should be used. Well, now we can actually make a character. For the rest of the video, we're going to be using this character. Let's call them Ample. I had an ex named Ample. I've given her general stats around, putting 2 points into luck and 1 in intelligence. A -1 into charisma that's put into agility. I also gave her the Bloody Mess pick, with no traits. A custom background giving me +2 to gun, speech, and sneak, with only a 9mm pistol, a cloth outfit, and some 9mm bullets. Now that we have a character, let's go around and look at... The world is a scary place, especially in a world where drinking soda can ruin the economy. You need to know how to both avoid the troubles of the world and know how to handle them if you do encounter them. Firstly, movement. More often than not, you'll be walking from point A to point B, then point C, D, E, and then last trip to F to get back to A. But the flesh is weak and can only last for so long. You have a traveling limit, a number of hours that you can walk before fatigue begins. You can walk 8 plus half your endurance modifier, rounded down. So Ample, in this example, can only walk for about 8 hours before fatigue begins. Now, every hour after the traveling limit is met, you gain 1 level of fatigue, which is a -1 per level to each of your d20 rolls. You can only ever have up to 9 levels of fatigue, which are lowered by 1 each turn. Similarly to traveling distance is the road walked. When you travel for at least half your maximum travel distance, you gain a level of fatigue. So after 4 hours of traveling, Ample gains a level of fatigue. Next is your passive sneak. As a group, depending on your speed you walk at, it can affect your stealth. As you can see, the way in which we walk by a creature determines our passive sneak. which to see if you're noticed by a creature, you compare your passive sneak to the creature's passive senses. Or you can be noticed by being loud and starting a fight and such and so forth, which will all affect your combat sequence rolls. Next is vehicles and mounts. Vehicles and mounts are a luxury most people never get. But if you are able to get your hands on them, here's how it works. Mounts, such as horses and other rideable animals, have their own travel times. Now, the player still effectively uses the same formula for travel time, but instead of using their number, they use the animal's number. And up to 1 hour, the mount can double their pace. This does give the mount a level of fatigue, however. Driving, however, does not give any level of fatigue and doubles their travel distance. However, this does not apply to passengers in said vehicle. I don't have enough time to re-record the audio, but I did have enough time to change my audio settings. Yay! Now, the travel pace table assumes natural land that isn't too hard to walk through. However, difficult terrain, things such as forests, swamps, ruins, and such and so forth, have the distance you can travel through. So instead of moving at 3 miles per hour, it's now 1.5 miles per hour. Along with that, during a single turn of combat, you can only move 20 feet. Then we have extremely difficult terrain, which quarters your travel pace and only allows for 10 feet of movement in combat. Example. We have 3 paths our group can walk through. All 3 are 12 miles long with no monsters. Path 1. This path is made of entirely normal terrain, taking about 4 hours to walk. This is where it gets convoluted. Path 2. Path 2 has 3 parts. Part 1 and 3 are normal terrain, but in the middle is a section of difficult terrain. Each part is 4 miles long, so the first and last miles are done in an hour and 20 minutes. The second part is doubled to 2 hours and 40 minutes, meaning that at a normal pace it will take 5 hours and 20 minutes to get through Path 2. Path 3. Path 3 is similar to Path 2, but instead of a difficult terrain in the middle, it's an extremely difficult terrain. So as before, the first and last sections both take an hour and 20 minutes. However, the middle now takes 5 hours and 20 minutes. So to cross Path 3 at a normal pace takes 8 hours. So, difficult and extremely difficult terrain can radically change how long a path takes. Along with that, you have to include things such as rivers, ponds, and such and so forth, and monsters and enemy encounters. Next, we move on to special types of movement. As walking is not the only way of getting over something. We have climbing, swimming, jumping, and sprinting. Climbing, making you off balance, and in combat you are limited by your endurance score to the number of rounds you can climb for. For example, Ample can only climb for 1 turn, due to the minimum round being 1. At the start of your round, after you reach your climbing limit, you fall off. You can also use climbing gear to reduce the AP cost by 1. Now, you might be asking, what off balance is? I don't know what that is. Honestly, I checked through the book. It says to check page, but page doesn't exist. And I checked the table of conditions. I checked the fan-made fix-up. I checked everything. And nothing. My best assumption is that whenever you get hit, you immediately fall off. But feel free to just say whatever to any group or do anything with. I'm not the guy who wrote this. With that minor little tangent over, let's go back to what we were talking about. Climbing! Now, there are 3 types of walls you can climb. Scalable, sheer, and treacherous. Scalable surfaces cost 3 AP for 5 feet of movement. Sheer surfaces cost 4 AP. Now, treacherous still only cost 4 AP, but you must also have a climbing gear equipped. So in a single turn, Ample can only move 10 feet on a scalable surface, along with that 10 feet on a sheer surface, due to the way that numbers work, but can't handle treacherous, as they're a bit underprepared. Swimming, you can conquer not just the lands, but the seas as well. The waters are just as dangerous and perilous as the lands, so you must first know how to swim before you can go to the deep end. You can dive into water, which increases the cost of movement by 1 AP, now costing 2. Now, you can hold your breath for a number of minutes equal to 1 plus your endurance modifier, which means Ample can only hold it for 1 minute. Just as there are different types of walls, there are different types of waters. Still waters are calm and only cost 2 AP for 5 feet of movement. Rushing waters still only cost 2 AP for 5 feet of movement, but at the start of your turn, you move 10 feet with the flow of the water. So if it's moving south, so are you. Treacherous waters, outside of combat, take you wherever the GM says so, for about 20 feet. In combat, it costs 3 AP for 5 feet of movement. Along with that, you can stay in treacherous waters for as many turns as equal to your endurance ability score, minimum of 1. So after 5 turns, Ample's drowning, which it means you have as many rounds equal to your endurance ability modifier before you die. Now, you can't stabilize or regain HP till you get some air, so rolling good on those death saves might not save you this time. Also, while underwater, yep, off balance, I really have no idea what to do with that, honestly. Kind of freeball it, I guess. Jumping. While you cannot directly seize the air like you can with the land or the seas, you can get close with jumping. There are two ways to jump, long and high. Long jumping is more horizontal different, cliffs and gaps and such and so forth. You can only long jump after spending 2 AP points to move on your last turn. If you didn't, then the distance is halved. So when long jumping, you jump a number of feet equal to 5 times your strength modifier, minimum of 5 feet. For every 5 feet of distance you make with the jump, it will cost you 1 AP. If you are unable to afford the AP cost, well then you can't make it on this turn. Now of course, you can commit to the jump, and you will only jump as far as you're able to. However, you can attempt to go above and beyond during a jump. Firstly, you will spend all the AP that you can on the jump. Then you roll a strength check on a DC equal to 10 plus the extra number of feet you want to clear. For example, if you're trying to jump an extra 10 feet, it would be a DC 20. So if you pass the DC, then congratulations, you were able to jump the distance. However, if you fail, use all the AP you would have used for the jump and you don't move at all. High jump is similar to long jump, but for more vertical aspects. With the same movement requirements as long jumping, you can jump a number of feet equal to 3 plus your strength mod. As example, Ample can only jump 3 feet into the air, so slam dunk for her. Every foot you jump costs 1 AP. Once more, you can attempt to go above and beyond. Spending the AP would cost to clear, and then a strength check with a DC 18 plus the remaining feet you need to jump. If you pass, you made the distance, and if you fail, you don't move and you lose all the AP you would have used on it anyway. Next up, sprinting. Now, I may have covered this before, or I didn't. The audio recording for this has been awful. Effectively, you can sprint in a straight line for 50 feet, using only 5 AP, but if you are interrupted or blocked, you still use all that AP, but can't continue the run. So if you run into a wall, boom-womp. So, with max AP, and the fact that each turn is 6 seconds, you can dash for 150 feet in a straight line, meaning that you can move at 18 miles an hour. And that's it for special types of movement and traversal. Now on to the environment. The environment is something just as alive as you are, able to hurt and maim you as much as a super mutant, if not kept track of. Often we are unaware of a lot of things. When most stand, most never see the... What the heck was I writing? Next up is falling. Falling is size-based, along with taking into account how long you fell would determine the damage. As example, a super mutant falling off a bookshelf and a human falling off a roof are two very different injuries. Using this table, we're able to compare damage. Hiya! From left to right, we start with size, self-explanatory. Then the initial fall distance, which is just how much you fall on a single turn. Then we have base damage, how much damage you take on said fall. Subsequent damage falls, how far you need to fall before you start taking damage again. And max damage, is sort of a terminal velocity of sorts. Because by this point, if you can survive 150 d4s, you won. Nothing can stop you. Now, when you fall and take damage, and when it deals damage to your HP, you gain a random arm and leg condition. Except Tiny, which only gains the condition after falling 50 or more feet. So Ample, as a human, will work as a medium class, thus falling 500 feet in their first turn in air. Next up, suffocation. Play the clip, which it means you have as many rounds equal to your endurance ability modifier before you die. Now, you can't stabilize or regain HP till you get some air, so rolling good on those death saves might not save you this time. Vision and light. Sight is our most important sense, and in the wasteland not being able to see is bad news. Coming with 3 levels of brightness in the wastelands, we have bright, dim, and darkness. Bright light's the standard lighting. The sun, a flashlight, such and so forth. You don't gain any negative or positive effects from bright light. Dim light makes everything lightly obscured, meaning that your passive sense is reduced by 5 and the range on your ranged weapons are halved. Dim lights are like the twilight of the day, or a torch in a dark room. So Ample passive sense is 7 when in dim light. Darkness creates a heavily obscured area, which it means you suffer from the blinded condition. Darkness is often the dead of night or in a cave. So, blinded means, you guessed it, you can't see. So you fail any ability check that requires sight. When being attacked, that creature gains advantage on attack rolls. You can also use a blind attack, however, only if you know there's a creature there. We'll cover blind attacks in the combat section. The lighting of a room can change via character actions. Lighting a body in fire might make a dim room into a bright room, or turning up the power might make a bright room pitch black. Now, your eyes aren't the only way of seeing. You also have blind sight, which allows you to see with a radius around you without the need of your eyes. So even in darkness, you can see. Think of Daredevil, or similar sorts of echolocation. Then we have night vision, which is similar to blind sight, but more limiting. Within a range, you can see darkness as if it was dim light. However, you can only see in black and white, so you won't be able to tell colors apart. Next is interacting with objects. This is less of a set of rules and more so an idea of what to do. Interactions are mostly based on what the GM says, so opening a door could lead to either 50 death claws or a mild insult, depends on the story. Next is food and water. People gotta eat, so do you, except robots, because they're not people, and don't need to eat, so you can skip this part if you're a robot. Every 24 hours, if you haven't eaten, you gain a level of hunger, and every 24 hours you haven't drank, you gain 3 levels of dehydration. Remember, super mutants gain double of both hunger and dehydration. Hunger and dehydration are similar to radiation, where every level adds a -1 to each d20 roll per level. So if you have a level of radiation, dehydration, and hunger, you get a -3 to each d20 roll. Also, they can straight up kill you. At level 10 of hunger or dehydration, you die, with no chances of coming back. Resting. Most madmen come from an uncomfortable bed. Only ghouls, humans, and super mutants need to sleep. Now, resting and sleeping are two different things. Resting could be laying down and reading a good book, or eating dinner with friends, whereas sleeping is sleeping. Every 24 hours without sleep, you gain a level of exhaustion. 1 hour of rest restores half your maximum stamina points, whereas sleeping comfortably restores it to full. 6 hours of rest, you gain back HP equal to your healing rate, and removes 1 level of exhaustion. Exhaustion works the same as dehydration and hunger, -1 to d20 rolls, and at 10th level, you die. Robots and Gen 2 synths don't need to sleep, but can rest. 1 hour of rest restores half your stamina points, and 2 hours heals you equal to half your intelligence or perception score plus your level. Also removes a level of exhaustion. Now, depending on where and how you're sleeping, you might not get the best rest. When not sleeping comfortably, you only get half of what you normally get when you're comfortably sleeping and or resting. Radiation! I'm just gonna play the clip. On the start of each of your turn, while you're in an irradiated zone, you roll a d20 against your RDC. Depending on how irradiated the zone is, you might roll loot. Now, this is mostly for DMs, but it's also good to know what's going on behind the scenes so you get an idea of how everything works. Also, this is really complicated and requires at any given time 8 different tables you gotta look through. So first, when you're looking for an item in a room, you roll luck. Depending on your luck score, your DM rolls a d100 based on your roll. We have 4 base loot tables. There are going to be a lot of tables. Just be prepared. Depending on what the DM rolls, you either get 1 d100 caps, or they go to another table. Yay! Some tables, such as the initial d20 roll for luck, bring you to what I call meta tables. Tables where you roll to see what table you go to next. Tables of tables. Say we get a 1 on our luck roll, then the DM gets a 52 on their d100 roll. The DM then rolls again to see whether you got armor, or weapons, which is based on 4 different tables based on your luck. Say the DM gets an 80 on that roll. We now gotta go roll the weapon meta table where they first roll what type of weapon you get. Then they go to that weapon table and roll again. So on average, you're gonna roll 2 to the 4 d100 when getting loot. Now, that sounds like a lot, and it is. But it really isn't that hard to do. You just need to roll a few times and search a few tables. Also, this is for pure random loot and trash you can find. Some containers are based on loot tables, so weapon crate gives you weapons, or ammo boxes gives you ammo. Pure random loot is a bit of a pain. Along with that, you can always pre-put items in certain areas of rooms. Along with that, some enemies drop loot. You just roll a d6 to see what they drop. They also have loot that they will always drop, and loot that they will only drop on a luck check. So it's an enemy per enemy basis rather than an overall grand table. Also, this is one of the few times the fanfics and the base PDF are different. What I explained was the base PDF. The fanfics is slightly different, and I'll never elaborate why. I really like the loot system here, but I know people will be mad and confused at it because it's a lot. Just, print out the tables. It's way easier than having to scroll through a PDF a bunch. Now you know how to survive the world. But now you have to survive this. A feral ghoul. It's time for... Combat is broken into 5 steps. Step 1. See if this is an ambush or you're the one ambushing. Determine surprise. Step 2. Take a stance. See where everyone is located. Step 3. Roll combat sequence. See who goes when. Step 4. Everyone gets their turn. Step 5. Repeat step 4 till victory. For the sake of the fight, Ample was surprised by the feral ghoul. Don't worry, we'll give Ample something in return. But first, Surprise. When a creature is surprised, you can't take an action on your first turn of combat, and reactions can be taken, but only at the end of the turn. Surprise doesn't affect the order in which you go, so even if you are surprised, you can still technically go first, but you just can't do much. This combat sequence, which determines who goes when. This is made via a perception check. For groups of the same enemies, you can roll a single dice or roll individually, whatever you find easier. You can also use a predetermined combat sequence of 10 plus the perception ability modifier. Now the GM orders you from highest to lowest in terms of score, and this is the combat sequence order. Now, if ties happens, you can talk it out with the GM or another player, or just roll luck. Now, Ample got a lucky 15, whereas the Feral got a 7, plus their modifier of a -3, so now a 4. We're forgetting one thing. Dave! Dave is another character on the side of Ample. That's the bonus from before. Basic stats, focusing on a melee build, with machetes and an unstoppable force perk. Also Psycho. Dave got a nat 20. Even with his -3 perception, he still goes first. Next is actions. Wait, this is different from AP? Correct. There are a series of actions that you can do that are put pre-written and integrated into combat. Most of the names are self-explanatory, so we're gonna go a bit fast for this section. Attack. Attack using a weapon. AP cost depends on the weapon. Dodge. 6 AP. Until the start of your next turn, all attacks made on you have disadvantage. Or, you can use a reaction to move up to 15 feet. Can't use when dying or out of AP. Equip a weapon. 3 AP. Take a weapon from your inventory and prepare to attack with any free hands. Must own an already in use weapon. No dual handing. Escape a grapple. 5 AP. Contest the creature's grappling with their strength or agility with your strength or agility. You choose. Grapple. 3 AP. Same as escaping a grapple. But now, you grapple a creature if you pass. They cannot move if grappled. Help. 6 AP. Gives advantage to an ability check of the creature you help, or give advantage on an attack roll if the creature is within 5 feet of you. They only get one use of advantage, and must be used before your next turn. Hide. 6 AP. This one might take a bit. Sneak checks with the DC equal to any nearby enemy's passive perception score. To hide, you must be heavily obscured or within full cover. You are hidden from any enemies that have a lower passive sense compared to your sneak roll. If you pass, enemies must use their luck modifier to roll for attack instead of the normal modifier. Instead of beating AC, you must beat the blind attack, which is 5 plus how far away the target is, rounded down by 5. Interact with objects. 3 AP. You interact with objects. AP can vary. Move 5 feet. 1 AP. You move 5 feet, as long as you aren't impaired or on difficult terrain. Ready. Plus 2 AP. You give a trigger for an action to happen. You must specify and spend the AP for the action, plus 2. Only when the trigger happens can you perform the action. You gain nothing if the trigger never happens. Load. 6 AP. You reload the amount of ammo for a clip, or specify the amount of ammo you want to load in. Search. 3 AP. It's just a perception check. Shove. 4 AP. You can test a creature's strength no more than one size longer than you in an unarmed check. The creature being shoved can also use their agility modifier. If you win, you can either knock the creature prone or push it 5 feet away from you. Sprint. 5 AP. Oh, finally. Play the clip. Sprinting. Now, I may have covered this before, or I didn't. The audio recording for this has been awful. Effectively, you can sprint in a straight line for 50 feet, using only 5 AP, but if you are interrupted or blocked, you still use all that AP, but can't continue the run. So if you run into a wall, boom womp. So, with max AP, and the fact that each turn is 6 seconds, you can dash for 150 feet in a straight line, meaning that you can move at it. Stand up from prone, 5 AP, you are no longer prone if you were prior. Stow a weapon, 3 AP, puts the weapon away so you can draw another. Take cover, 3 AP. If you have 3/4 or 1/2 cover, you can squat, kneel, or duck to gain full cover. When you attack, you lose cover till you take it again. Unarmed strike, 3 AP. Hit him with your hands, 5 feet of range. Use a chem, 4 AP. You use a chem. Well, those are the actions listed. So, yeah. But what about attacking? Violence is awesome, and in the system, there are a bunch of ways to kick someone's ass. Unarmed attacks. As stated before, they cost 3 AP and deal 1d4 plus strength or agility mod. Bludgeoning damage only. Blocking. With either an unarmed or melee weapon, you can spend 3 AP to block, which increases your damage threshold by 2 plus endurance mod against other melee attacks. This lasts till your next attack. Critical hit. All weapons have a chance listed in the weapon table here. When you make an attack and the result of the base d20 with any mods is equal to or higher in the you automatically hit the damage and deal extra damage. The damage or effect of the critical is listed in the weapons table. Sometimes it does 3 times the damage or it adds an extra hit die. All weapons you attack with the exception of shotguns, have the chance lowered by a number equal to half your luck mod. So say you have a +2 to luck, instead of needing to get a natural 20 on attack roll, you now need to get a 19. Critical failures. If you get a 1 on a d20 on attack, your weapon gain 3 levels of decay. Sneak attacks. If an enemy cannot see you and are unaware of your presence, all your hits are crit and ignore stamina points. You must roll and beat the target's HC, however. Blind attack. Play the clip. Enemies must use their luck modifier to roll for attack instead of the normal modifier. Instead of beating AC, you must beat the blind attack, which is 5 plus how far away the target is, rounded down by 5. Now, in Fallout, the best part of the combat system were VATs, which allowed you to target body parts and deal certain effects if you hit them, which, spectacularly, the system has been able to translate into targeted attacks. On your turn, you can choose to make a targeted attack. You choose a limb on a target creature within range to attack. You will need to spend a little extra AP, the amount is dependent on the body part. If you hit, the damage is affected by your hit die. Example, the eyes, when hit, have the total damage. If you hit the target's HP, you roll a d4 to see what condition the body part is effective. You can reroll the d4 a number of times equal to your luck ability modifier. Melee weapons get a reduction on the extra AP cost by 2 points, minimum 1. Critical hits, part 2. Critical hits inflict a severe injury based on the limb, or you can inflict up to 2 conditions to the applied target. Now, there are 13 limb-specific conditions. Some of them are cooler than others or more dramatic, but overall, they're always useful. I'll just show them on screen for a second because going all over them is just pain. This is already page 18, come on. Cover. Cover works in quarters, where the more quarters of covers you get, the more coverage of your quintessential yet-to-be carcass is protected. Oh my god, I'm never doing that again. Half cover gives a +2 to AC, 3/4 cover gives a +5 to AC, and resistance to traps and explosives beyond the cover. Total cover means you cannot be directly attacked. You can use a creature as cover, where if an attack roll is made towards you and it's below a 6, the creature using to cover you takes the damage. Now, damage types and damage resistance and vulnerability. There are 14 different types of damage ranging from basic stuff like bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing, to lasers, plasma, and explosives, all of which can either be more effective at killing something or less. Some creatures have resistance to certain types of damage, and thus do only half the damage, rounded down of course. Or they have vulnerability to that damage type, which means that you double the damage. So for a feral ghoul here, they're resistant to poison, so any attack that would deal poison damage would be halved. Also, some creatures have condition immunities, meaning that they can't be affected by a certain condition. A feral ghoul here, for example, can't be affected by the irradiated condition. Healing and dropping to 0 HP. You can heal both HP and SP throughout combat, though costing AP, making it easy to keep going. However, if you do make it to 0 HP, that doesn't mean you're dead, as we covered back in the HP section, but there are other factors when it comes to having 0 HP. If you are reduced to 0 HP from attack and the difference of your health and the damage is greater than your max, case in point here, Ample, who has 10 HP, gets sniped from 25 feet away on a sneak attack critical. Sniper rifles have a 4 times damage critical multiplier. Let's roll for base damage. 2d6, 6 times 4, 24, so the difference between the damage and the health is 14, which is more than my max. So now I have a severe injury. Maybe I lost a hand or a leg, who knows? Now, you can be instantly killed if the damage equals 3 times our max HP. So for example, Ample would need to be hit with 30 or more damage to instantly kill it. Also, when taking damage at 0 HP and doing death saves, you lose the death saves instantly. Critical hits count as 2 failures. Final stretch now, baby, 7 more pages to go. You can also stabilize a creature either by healing it or passing a medicine check with the DC equal to 10 minus the creature's endurance. If you pass, they get up with 1 HP. Now, killing isn't always necessary, sometimes you just need to knock them out. When dealing damage with melee and the creature attacked is reduced to 0 HP, the attacker can choose whether it knocks them out or kills them. If they are knocked out, they are unconscious for a number of hours equal to 1d4 minus their endurance mod. Some items and perks grant temporary HP or SP. They work as temporary bonuses to either stat, so when you get hit for SP, you first take the damage out of the temporary SP amount, and when that runs dry, you start taking damage from the actual SP. Same rules apply to HP. Healing only affects your base HP and SP. You can also not add multiple sources of temporary HP or SP. Meaning if you take a perk that gives you 12 temporary SP and use an item that gave you 10 temporary SP, you choose which amount of SP you have. You do not add them together. Also, temporary SP and HP do not affect you when you're in the dying condition. They do, however, serve as a buffer for damage, so when you take damage and have temporary HP or SP, you no longer just immediately fail a saving throw, unless it goes over the temporary amount. Along with that, temporary HP and SP, unless stated otherwise, only last until the points are depleted, or you take a rest that was at least 1 hour. To correctly calculate damage, an order has been given of what stats are calculated first. First is temporary SP, then stamina points. You skip SP damage if the attack is a sneak attack, or the creature being attacked substituted with health. Then you calculate the resistance/vulnerability based on the attack. So SP, whether base or temporary, takes the base damage of the attack. After you either half the damage if you're resistant or double it if you are vulnerable, you subtract your DT from the damage. Then you deal the damage to your temporary HP, then to your actual SP. So for Ample, when she gets hit with 10 damage from a feral ghoul, she takes the 10 first from her stamina points, leaving you with 1 stamina point and 10 health. Okay, finally, you know how combat works, generally. So the stage is set. We have Dave and Ample on the left, 20 feet apart, and 30 feet apart from the ghoul on our right. The turn order is Dave, Ample, then the feral ghoul. Round 1. Dave moves 25 feet, now directly in front of the feral ghoul. Using 5 of his AP, then rolls to attack with his machete. 3 plus 8, 11, beats the armor class. Rolls for damage. 2 plus 1 plus 5, 8. The feral ghoul rears back in pain. Its stamina points are gone, and now at 2 HP. Dave moves 5 feet back. Ample is too startled by the ghoul to do anything at the moment. The ghoul rushes towards Ample, using 5 AP and moving 25 feet. The ghoul rolls to attack an Ample. Oh no, a nat 20. Rolling for damage, 6, doubled, 12. Ample trips back, losing all her stamina points and now at 9 health. The ghoul, with 4 AP left, attacks again. 18, damage, 5. Ample's at 4 HP now. This is the end of the ghoul's turn. Round 2. Dave moves 10 feet towards the ghoul using 2 AP. Damn it, natural 1. Dave's weapon now has 3 levels of decay. That's a -3 on his next attack roll. He swings again. Oh god, another natural 1. Another 3 levels of decay. Out of AP, Dave ends his turn. Ample targets the ghoul heads, going from her 5 AP for an attack to 9. She rolls for attack. 6. Damn, she's not gonna hit it. Knowing well that the ghoul is going to attack her and knows that she has to hit this, using her karma cap, she flips it and re-rolls. 12, just enough to hit. With an additional damage dice, the 1d6 damage goes up to 2d6, plus the 2 from her agility, and plus 2 from the bloody mess pack. 14 damage. She rolls luck for the bloody mess pack. 7. Damn, maybe next time. The bullet pierces the skull as it explodes into an array of meat chunks and splatters of blood. The ghoul is dead. Ample and Dave win. Dave, however, is then vaporized by some random Zayton, meaning Ample gets all the EXP. Speaking of which, to level up you need 1000 EXP per level, which for the sake of the video, Ample gets from killing the ghoul. It had a family, you know. There are other modifiers for EXP. If someone reaches 0, they get a +10 bonus. If someone dies, everyone gets a free level. Blah blah blah. Also, it's good to note for DMs that XP should not be rewarded directly for killing, but surviving. Now, when you get a level, you get a lot of stuff to pick from. Every 4 levels after level 1, meaning 5, 19, 13, etc., you get skill points. These skills can be put into any skill and will permanently increase that skill. I said skill a lot during that sentence. The amount of points is determined by intelligence. If your intelligence equals 5, you get 4. If your intelligence is greater or equal to 6, you get 5. And if it's less than 4, you only get 3. Note, you do gain any previous lost skill points if your int increases. Every level, except 5th, 9th, 13th, 17th, and 19th, you get a perk. Special little modifiers that help build your character. We went over this before. Health and SP follow this formula. You add 5 to your base 10 every 2 levels after 1, and you multiply your mod, agility and endurance, by a current level, rounded up to the nearest whole number. Or you can just use the table that they give you. It's so much easier than making a goddamn Desmos table. This Desmos table took me 2 hours. Well, that's the end of the combat section. And, now we're into... Every item has a cost and often can be bought at vendors. However, some items, determined by the GM, can have different rarities. These affect the price, so an extremely rare item, say a water filter, is at a 250 markup, whereas a common run-of-the-mill 9mm is only 25% of the base value. Along with that, every level of decay decreases the price by 10%, so 5 levels of decay mean a 50% discount. Also, while I did mention briefly in the combat section what decay is, it's effectively radiation but for your weapons and armor. So for weapons, it's a -1 to each attack roll per level, whereas for armors, your AC and DT go down by half your level of decay for the armor. Bare minimum AC is 10, and DT is 0. Decay can't let you go below those two numbers. Other items such as sleeping bags and cams can have levels of decay either from being hit by an attack, look at the target attack table for more info, or when the GM says so. Decay only affects these items when they're at level 10, which means they break. Broken items just don't do anything and only serve to weigh you down, or to be used as an improvised weapon. With that, you can also repair items via a crafting check, which is based on the crafting bonus each item has, plus 10. You do also need the appropriate materials for said item. Note, the repair items and the crafting items are a separate list. We'll get to the crafting section when we get to the crafting section. Okay. Back to the repair check. If you pass, the item loses a level of decay. If you fail, you waste half the materials needed to repair that item. This is applied for all items. The base PDF has dozens and dozens of weapons, with cost for each of them, so unless you make a new item, you don't really need to figure out the cost of an item. I can't cover all of them, but some notable ones that aren't weapons or armors are flashlights, gas masks, sleeping bags, tents, backpacks, and hazmat suits. Now, there's one more thing about items. A large part of the items either have preset properties, or in the case of weapons, have weapon class specific properties. Things like food, drinks, cams, robot overclocking programs, which are just cams but for robots, all have properties. Food and drinks have properties that are shared between them. There's about a dozen of them, which I'm not going to read out all of them. But every property has an effect on how the item interacts with you outside of just how much health you get from it. Some drinks are bland, but you only heal half the stamina points equal to your level. And overclocking programs have their own list of properties, but still work the same way. Each item has a list of properties that you add to the effect when using the item. Weapons have 3 different lists, one for range, one for melee, and one for explosive, which change how the weapons work and how the combat potential of the weapon is effective. But that's not the only thing that can affect how weapons work. You can also modify your weapons, Now, melee and range have different modding systems for each of them. Melee is simpler, so we'll start there. Every melee weapon gets 1 mod. That's it. Mods that you can use are based on whether or not your GM says so have fun. Also, usually depending on what the DM says, you can usually buy them or craft them yourself. Range weapon instead use mod slots. Each weapon has 6 mod slots. Each weapon mod uses a different amount of slots, and can only be used if it has a certain property which is listed under the equipable weapons of the mod. Or they can be used if the weapon you're trying to mod has another mod attached to it. So you can have both a booster capacitor and an overclocked capacitor at the same time. Also, if you go over 6 mod slots, your gun stops working. Also, ranged weapons have another thing that makes them even more complex. Ammunition. Special types of ammunition do exist, which you can usually buy them or craft them along with normal weapon ammo. Every ranged weapon lists both how much a clip is and what type of ammo is used. There are 3 types of base ammos: guns, energy, and heavy ammo. Now, 10 sets of ammunition for guns and energy are equal to 1 load, so 10 12-gauge shotgun shells equals 1 load, or 10 cryo cells equal 1 load. 10 ammunition is used on an individual scale, whereas energy ammunition is based on the gun itself. An individual microfusion cell is 16 shots for a plasma pistol, but 12 shots for a plasma rifle. Every ranged energy attack weapon works like this, so from energy weapons, the amount of leverage you get from a certain type of ammo is more so based on the gun using said ammo, rather than how many shots you can get out of it. So on an individual scale, one 9mm bullet is worth less than a single microfusion cell, but you rarely get a single amount of gun ammo, so it balances out with energy. Now, heavy ammo takes the individualism of ammunition to the max. Each munition has its own weight per amount, so one missile is equal to 10 9mm bullets in weight. Now, some ammunition has special varieties, which affects how the weapon using said ammo works and often adds special properties to it. Now, the special properties are only applied for as long as you have the special ammo equipped. Energy weapons also have special types of ammunition. Also, there's a specific type of ammo called the syringe, which only applies to one weapon called the syringe, which has its own list of special ammunition that all do wildly different things. Okay, so we're done with weapons. Now we can talk about something else, like armies. Okay, we're nearly done. It's so close. I can see the end of the Google Doc. Unlike weapons that have dozens of pre-made stat blocks and effects, armors are a bit more based into 6 material types, which you can then flavor into different pieces of clothing. The 6 materials are cloth, leather, metal, multi-layered, ballistic weave, and steel. All of them have different costs, ACs, DTs, and slots for upgrade, which we'll cover in a moment. Each material also comes with a load and the strength requirement, so no armor is directly better than another. Let's take a look at the list. We can see that steel and ballistic weave, the most expensive and hardest to get armors, are nearly completely different. Ballistic weave is 150 caps more expensive and has both a lower strength requirement, load, and AC, but has a higher DT. However, steel is cheaper and has a higher AC, but is incredibly heavy and has a strength 6 requirement. So neither of them are directly better, as mods can change how they work and make them more attuned to your playstyle. Like cloth armor has the lowest AC and DT, but 8 slots for upgrades, and it's only 5 load and requires 1 strength. So each of these armor types can have great synergy with almost any playstyle if used right. Now you can buy and craft upgrades for armor, however if you make one say for cloth, you can't apply that same upgrade to a leather armor, same vice versa. It also takes 1 minute to put on the upgrade or take it off. Now, each of the upgrades can have 3 ranks. Now, each rank is additive to the last, so rank 3 has rank 1 and 2 effects along with its own special rank 3 effect. So at rank 3 of Reinforced, you don't get a plus 2 DT, you get a plus 4 DT because you have the first 2 ranks along with the third. Ranks do not take up slots for upgrade, meaning that cloth armor can have 8 rank 3 upgrades all at the same time. Armor is a complex system that can be very daunting, but isn't that bad. But what is complicated and daunting is power armor. Power armor is similar-ish to normal armor, AC and upgrade slots and all that, but its own thing a lot of time, which, by the way, it will radically change how you play, so you keep that in mind, mostly for GMs, because it gets really busted. To even get in the thing, it takes 6 AP to enter it, and then another 6 AP to exit it. Now, instead of DT, you get defense points, DP. They're a mix of DT and SP, serving as a bonus health that you can use instead of your actual HP. Each armor has a max DP it can have, and once you run out of DP, you gain 1 level of decay, but you get all the DP back, until level 10 when you stop getting DT back. DP is based on the number that is not modified by any stats. DP stays the same even if you exit and re-enter the armor, so if you leave an armor with 10 DP left, and you get back in, it'll only have 10 DP left, for that level of decay. You still have stamina points while in the armor, so instead of 1 buffer, you now have 2 buffers, that being SP and DP, along with health. As well as that, in the armor, your strength ability score is considered to be a 10. You are also now a large creature instead of a medium, so strength requirements for weapons effectively on a thing. With that, your melee range is also increased by 5 feet, and you can spend 6 AP to move in a turn. You can move an additional 15 feet. You also sprint twice as fast. Going up from prone only costs 1 AP, and when you're forced to move, you only move half the distance. When falling, being thrown, or something heavy falls on you, you only take half the damage. Stimpaks and chems can be used without AP cost. You don't suffer limb conditions, and your limbs can't be severed. Also, radiation immunity, you can breathe underwater, but you can't swim and fall 100 feet in each round while you're in water. Power armor can be upgraded, but each upgrade can be used on every single other power armor, unless specifically said in the upgrade. When attempting to repair the armor, you must spend 15 minutes to attempt to repair the armor. You need 5 steels, 3 circuitry, 3 aluminum, and 3 adhesive, and roll against the crafting check DC. Power armor is heavy and has a load of 100. Unless you equip it, then it has a load of 0. Hell, you can use the armor even if you're missing a limb. Now, power armor, of course, needs power, needing the use of a fusion core to function. You can spend 5 AP to replace the fusion core. Each suit has a different allotted time, so fusion cores might last longer in some others than armor. If the allotted time is used up, you have a minute of reserve power. When that time runs out, you are ejected out. You can choose to overwrite this process, however, you are both grappled and restrained and cannot escape unless your strength score is 20. Escaping this way decays the power armor by 10 levels. Fusion cores outside of having a battery life can also be targeted, costing a plus 5 AP on a targeted attack on a creature that can attack your fusion core if they're facing your back. But every 30 damage taken, the fusion core becomes overheated until the start of its operator's next round. Overheating happens when you use 15 or more AP in a single turn while in power armor. It overheats until the end of your next turn. When it overheats, it uses 30 minutes of its allotted time in that one turn. If you only have 30 minutes left, well, then you are ejected from the armor. Now, it also blows up. If you're still in the armor when it blows up, you are immediately killed. The explosion has an initial 20-foot radius and an additional 50-foot radius outside of that. The first 20-foot radius deals 20 D10 explosive damage, and from the 20 to 70 feet radius you take half as much. Along with that, the power armor is destroyed, you die. Along with that, the area is a level 5 irradiated zone, decreasing by 1 level every 24 hours. Now we're on to crafting and repairing, which we briefly talked about before. Crafting is a very useful and handy trait to know. To craft you need both the materials and a workspace to attempt to craft. The workspace can either be preset, or at the discretion of the GM, you can jury-rig your own. Crafting checks are made when attempting to craft something. Now, you can skip the roll by having a crafting skill equal to the check, where you pass instantly. Now, you can still roll, and if you do pass with that roll, you use less of the materials, but you still craft it using the same DC. Now, when you normally roll for it, you have to roll against a DC equal to 10 plus the item crafting DC, which is listed along with an item. It can be found on the item blueprint encyclopedia page. If you pass, you craft the item and use said materials. If you fail, you lose 1d4 of each material used, minimum of 1, and you don't craft the weapon. Now, if you succeed by 8 or more, you can craft the item and use 1d4 less of one material used, minimum of 1. If you fail by 8 or more, you lose 1d6 of each material, so keep that in mind. You can, however, get assistance from another creature, which reduces the time to craft by half by every creature assisting you. However, all of the creatures making the item must succeed or the whole thing fails, even if only one of them fails in a group of 10. Now, all the previously mentioned like repair statistics all still apply for every item, so you need a certain amount of items to repair something. If you fail against a repairing DC, you lose some items. If you pass, they lose a level of decay. Now, you can repair a broken item, but it uses 5 times the amount of time and resources. The repair DC is also increased by 5. If you pass, the weapon is fixed, but now has 5 levels of decay instead. Also, you can use another weapon to repair other weapons, if they're A, the same weapon, or B, share similar statistics. Check with the DM. Repair another level of decay as long as the item you're using has 5 or less levels of decay compared to the item you're repairing. So an item with 0 levels of decay is able to repair an item with 5 levels of decay. And yeah, I think that's it. At least everything that's generally important. Oh wait, I feel like I'm forgetting something. Yeah, Wild Wasteland. It's a trait that you can pick up that changes how other traits work, making some traits an even more high-risk, high-reward system. Also, if your GM adds some Wild Wasteland events to your campaign, that would be really cool. Please. Yeah, well, now this is the outro section. Probably have some sort of song I made in the background here. It's like credits to people here. None of this part is scripted, so, yeah. You know, this was fun making, I guess. Fun is relative anyway. I had a bunch of problems recording and editing time and all that. Yeah.